Meeting is being recorded.
Okay, if you don't want to be recorded, you can drop anytime, but we record it for just in case. I don't know how many people get a chance to look, but John is nice enough to convert it to a YouTube file that people can go search and look up the meeting if they happen to miss it for work reasons, like Tom or somebody like that. So, good evening. I'm Ron, and this is the monthly AREDNMESH meeting. I'll go ahead and say it now. The next mesh meeting in October, I will be totally out of town and probably not have really good internet. Um, I don't know what Starlink's going to do. And tonight I'm operating on a T-Mobile hotspot. So it's working. So if it works, I can get in. But John, if you wouldn't mind the next meeting, would you please host unless you actually see me on?
Yeah, I can check with you a couple of days before, and we can come to some arrangement.
Yeah.
Did
So
you say you had Starlink with your
yeah, I have a Starlink system I take down from the house and put it in the RV.
okay. I'm using Starlink here now.
Did you get the letter that says that they're raising the price?
Oh yeah, it's 120 a month now, probably going up.
Okay, well, that's probably because you have a fixed location.
Yeah,
I have a portable and it's going from 150 to 165.
Wow.
yeah,
So,
they have a, usage based price model where if more people are in demand of the service, the price goes up.
yeah. Yeah, so I have that and um I'll show it to you. Maybe you can see it. Little T-Mobile hotspot. And it works really good here because we're in T-Mobile land. Um, so normally what we talk about is what we've done and what we intend to do with AREDNMESH in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, all over, whoever joins us, find out what other people are doing, and that's the purpose of this meeting. Um, so I haven't done anything, and I'm just the host. So I'll turn it over to somebody that might have something to say, and that would be Nick, my friend Nick, who is a satellite communications expert.
At least once. um, well, I guess I do have a couple things to say. So I was just in Michigan, and one of the things we were doing was we were putting we put up Starlink and Wi-Fi at this sort of rural camp that my wife's family has, and that was a very interesting experience because we were setting up Wi-Fi access, like wireless access points, in a mesh configuration, and essentially using the same technologies that Arden uses. And in May, we just set up a bunch of mesh access points that were all trying to act in like a big mesh configuration. In fact, here I'll share my screen. This is what the camp looks like. So there's these different buildings here. And this point here is where Starlink is. And we have an access point there, and we have an access point at this red marker. And then we have another access point here at this building. And then we have another access point here at this building. And they're supposed to set up a mesh. And the first three legs of that, or the first 3 points of that, worked out great. The fourth point had a lot of trouble communicating with the previous point. And so in the most recent trip, we set up a dish to beam directly from one end to the other end. And that worked out great. And I guess the point of all of this is just, it made me think a lot about sort of the consumer grade hardware that lots of people are buying. Because we bought Ubiquiti access points they have omnidirectional antennas, but they're basically the same power as one of those TP links that everybody gets. And I've got a bunch here. I don't know, this somewhere here. But it's the TP Link CPE 210, the little 120 degree sector that lots of people get. So these radios that we had omnidirectional antennas, but the radio was the same power as that. And they had those radios, they could connect over like a couple 100 feet. But more than that was challenging if there was any obstruction at all, right? Little bit of foliage, little trees, things like that. Direct line of sight was no problem at all, but if there was any foliage at all, caused some problems. And the way that we solved that is that we put up direct point-to-point dishes from one end of the camp to the other. And I bring that up because that was really eye-opening to me in terms of like, when we're talking about our AREDN nodes that we're putting up and how we're thinking about, the sites that we have set up and how everything is connected between them. And so, for instance, one of the things that we're struggling with, I think, is at Providence Mount St. Vincent, we have a site, and there's another site at Beacon Tower, which is, let's see, that is 4 miles away. And those two nodes aren't really talking to each other very well. And at Providence Mount St. Vincent, we have a 120 degree sector antenna. And at Beacon Tower, I think it's an omnidirectional antenna. But that distance may be too much for an omnidirectional or even a 120 degree antenna. That may be something that we want to think about. Links like that may just require a more directional antenna link. And another piece of evidence to support this is I've been talking a lot with Doug Kingston, who is part of the HamWAN board, and their HamWAN setup, they have these sites with these sector antennas, but those sector antennas they're only using to provide local connectivity. All of the site-to-site links that they have direct point-to-point dishes, that have really tight beams. That maybe they have a 30-degree beam, right, or maybe even tighter than that. And so when they're talking about linking from one site to another over maybe I don't know, what are some of these sites are like? They're like a few miles away. They're using dishes to do that, and they're doing that on a separate frequency. And so that I don't know, all of this information just in my mind sort of coalesces this idea that setting up these omnidirectional antennas where everything's running on the same frequency, and we're expecting sort of major sites like Providence Mount St. Vincent or Beacon Tower or Brookdale in Admiral, we're expecting those sites to be linked using exactly the same equipment and exactly the same frequencies as we're expecting, local individual homes connecting to, the nearest site. That may be, it may be more difficult than the equipment can support. And so I think it's worth thinking about setting up some dishes on different frequencies between these core sites like Brookdale Admiral, Providence Mount St. Vincent, Beacon Tower. So that was just something that I had been thinking about over the last couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, in doing this installation myself of traditional Wi-Fi, and then talking to Doug Kingston at HamWAN about how they're doing their deployment. And HamWAN doesn't do meshing. It's sort of very different in some ways, but it's very similar in terms of the base technology, right? Like they don't do mesh stuff, but they are using Wi-Fi technology. So I just wanted to share that.
So if I hear you, and I think I do, the Providence Mount St. Vincent and the senior center, even though it's hidden, but let's say it wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
and the Brookdale Admiral all should have a dish type connection to one or the other. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we put filters on the Brookdale Admiral, so it had a clear signal from Beacon.
I don't know that it has a super reliable connection to Beacon. It can see Beacon from time to time, but I don't know that I guess it seems flaky to me when I've looked at it. And so that it may be close to being good enough, right? I mean, it may be that kind of omnidirectional to omnidirectional connection that way is close to working over, that's also like, that's got to be okay, let's just see.
What if we raised the Brookdale Admiral antenna?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I think it already has line of sight to where's the I think it has it has line of sight to it's here somewhere, right? It's like here.
Yeah, keep going south.
It's on one of these buildings, right?
There's Admiral, California, that backwards F thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Brookdale Admiral, there it is. Yeah. So it's here somewhere. So from that point over to Beacon Tower, that's like almost 3.5 miles. I
Yeah.
think it has line of sight. I just wonder if maybe like that distance is worth putting, thinking about putting up a dish to dish, like a point to point, as opposed to these two omnidirectional links.
What about, I don't think we would well, no, because there's HamWAN at the Beacon site. So
Yeah.
we're restricted. We can't use the 5.4 gig to try and link in.
Well,
But
even
maybe if we did the 2.4 and then did it at a +1 frequency, which is 2 off of the -2,
mhm.
it might be able to tie it in.
And on 2.4, I mean, we have -1. I guess we only have -1 and -2, right? Yeah.
Well, those are the ones that are protected.
Right.
We can use 1, 2, 3, and 4,
Yeah.
but
Like, I
they're
think that would be
unprotected.
it'd be interesting Yeah, I think it would be very interesting to try that out.
Maybe
to
we need
see.
to do another 60 gigahertz link.
I mean, that's another thought too. Does Arden does it support up that high? I thought it does 900, 2.4, 3.4, and 5.8. And the 3.4 is, of course, like FCC could step in at any time and say that's gone.
Yeah, so I thought we had 60 gigahertz was what was used from Mount St. Vincent to Beacon.
I think at Mount St. Vincent, Hamwan has a 60 gigahertz link to the Seattle EOC.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong about that. I don't know. I don't actually, I only know it incidentally from Doug talking about it.
Yeah. Well, we could definitely try and, well, no, the Beacon mesh, is that on -2?
I think right now the Beacon Arden node is on -1, just like everything else. I
Maybe,
guess I don't know that the interference between -1 and -2, like I know that there is interference there, right? Just like there's interference if you're on 1 and 2, the traditional consumer channels, there's
yeah.
interference. I don't know that that interference is worse than trying to have the omnidirectional link to omnidirectional link over 4 miles. I don't. I
Well,
don't know.
then,
I don't know one way or the other, right? I think it's worth. I think it's worth an experiment to
yeah.
see if that would create a more reliable connection. Because right now, Beacon Hill has 0 neighbors. There's no other Arden nodes that can talk to Beacon Hill.
So if we put a dish on Admiral Brookdale, we just need to figure out a way to get it off of Brookdale to the local neighbors.
So that's PMSV. Sorry, say that one more time.
So if we put a dish on Admiral Brookdale
Mm-hmm.
and point it towards Beacon,
Yes.
we get a good signal there at Admiral Brookdale. How do we then move that signal out to where people can grab it? Because if it's going to be on a dish, it won't have any side or back lobes.
Right. Yeah. So I think that this is like the backbone local cell model where you have a dish that's on one frequency that is connected via a physical cable, like an Ethernet cable, to an omnidirectional antenna that's providing a local connection. And so the idea is that there's these backbone links that are all sort of carefully like deployed with a dish that we set up there's a dish here at Admiral Brookdale and it's pointed towards Beacon, and maybe there's another site that's in line of sight there that we could also connect to, but those are backbone links and we don't invite other local people to run on that frequency. And then at these sites, we also run this omnidirectional antenna on a different radio, on a different frequency.
Do you see
Yeah,
that? The second item there? It's got my
yes,
#1 node
but it's
at,
listed as idle, which means that it's not actually running any traffic there. It's
yeah,
for whatever reason it's decided it's not strong. In fact, this 26% NL, so the 61% is in one direction and the 26% is in the other direction. That's probably too low for it to decide too poor quality for it to actually connect. The only one that's active actually right now is Providence Mount St. Vincent, but it's a very low quality link. And so usually when I open this page up, it's listed as inactive or idle, and it's too low quality for it to actually run any traffic there.
Mm.
And if I try to like run a connection over that link, it doesn't work at all.
Mm.
So usually when I look at this page, the only line that is active is the tunnel to the EOC. And that's an internet connection, right? That runs, there's an internet connection at Beacon Hill that runs to the Seattle EOC.
Mm-hmm.
So that, it's great that it kind of sort of almost can connect to Providence Mount St. Vincent, but not reliably, I would say. That's been my experience anyways.
Yeah, I bet if I put a computer on that node upstairs, it might do something.
Yeah, you can certainly try. Yeah. Trying to decode what all of this means is also kind of a bit of a guessing game. The documentation is not very explicit about what that means. And you can see, right, Frank like occasionally can kind of sort of get in.
Yeah.
So the way I've seen this work is there's sort of like, can it talk to the other node at all? And then second to that is it a strong enough connection that it will that it will decide to actually be a traffic bearing link?
Yeah.
And so active means it's actually going to run traffic there. Idle means it won't. And then this previous neighbor is like, it can't even talk to Frank's node at all, but it did at some point in the past.
Yeah. 6 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Or now it says 3 minutes ago.
Right.
Well, it looks like we have some more engineering to do then over the winter.
Yeah.
I'd like to see this network up by parade time next year,
Hmm.
so we can put IP phones out on the course on the parade route, or cameras.
I think that's a great goal, is to have that up and running. And I mean, the nice thing about that is that it's not like all of Seattle has to be lit up, right? It's just the parade route.
Yeah. And we can do that if we get enough people with mesh nodes. But we have to engineer the frequency spectrum a little bit better than it is.
Yeah, it seems like there's kind of two ways to attack this. Is one is just like, if we have enough people that are close enough with enough line of sight, links in between each of them. The other way to do it is to, and these are complementary, right? It is to have some sites where we work really hard to make sure that we've got a lot of power between those sites. And by a lot of power, I mean a powerful radio or a very directional antenna.
Yeah.
Pointed at that. I mean, it'd be interesting to go to back to Providence Mount St. Vincent with a like a dish, and point it straight at Beacon Tower and see, can we get a reliable connection with because Beacon, let's say, I don't know if Beacon, I'm pretty sure that Beacon has it should tell us actually.
I think Frank has got a barbecue grill antenna.
Yeah, right. So beacon is an omnidirectional antenna. And if we had a directional antenna, like the dish, like you're saying, like if Frank has a directional antenna pointed directly at Beacon Tower from Providence Mount St. Vincent, can we get a reliable, stable, high quality connection between those 2 points?
Yeah.
That would be I think that would be a useful data point, to help
So Nick,
inform us.
does that mean there would be an Omni at Beacon and a directional at our end? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think ideally we would be more careful about these choices about like a dish to dish connection, point to point, dish to dish connection where we want those connections. But given, the problem with Beacon is that's an ACS owned node, right? And so like none of the people here in this conversation have access to Beacon Hill, right? And so if we
Yep.
want to get access to Beacon Hill, we got to talk to Doug or we got to talk to Tim. And I don't know if you've ever tried to talk to Tim before, but he's a busy guy, let's just say, right?
So are you suggesting that it would be an experiment to use a dish at this end with the Omni at Beacon?
Yeah, right. And if that's good, exactly, right. So we do that experiment. And if that's good, then that actually tells us, hey, look, we can have an omnidirectional antenna at one end and a dish at another, and we can get a reliable 4-mile connection that way.
You know,
Because
I
right
would,
now, just my experience, like what I'm looking at, just given what's at Providence, Mount St. Vincent, and Beacon, and I would, if you disagree, that's great. I'd love to have that conversation. But my understanding is if we've got a 120-meter sector at Providence Mount St. Vincent, and we've got an omnidirectional at Beacon, that's not a good enough connection for it to be reliable, right? Like now this has gone back to being idle. It's not active anymore. And it's
what
dropped
about,
down to 57 and 15.
what about moving the sector antenna to Beacon and putting a dish on Providence?
Yeah, I mean that would be another way to do it. I think we just need to get access to Beacon, and we need to whoever's owns and manage. I mean, it's an ACS site, so we just need to talk to Tim or Doug or something like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to, and Barry Palmore, K7PAL is also on that team.
Yeah,
I think they call it the Com T team.
well, we can talk to Barry tomorrow.
Yeah. And there's a dish at Salvation Army, or not a dish, but a sector antenna at Salvation Army. And we just need to come up with a dish antenna, and maybe we look at the prices and have the club buy it.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Another good thing, actually, another good piece of information about channels is at this camp that I did the installation of all the Arden nodes. They were all 5 gigahertz, and the dish is running on one channel, and the access points are running on another, and there didn't seem to be any adverse interaction between those things running on the same band, I guess. So I think that was, it's I think it's worth thinking about channel -1 and channel -2, even though they're super close, even though they overlap, it's still worth, I think, at least trying to use those as we use both of those frequencies at the same site. With a radio with a dish on the one frequency and an omnidirectional access point on the other frequency. One is providing point-to-point connection over a backbone link, and the other is providing local client, local user access.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question, Ken. ACS is communicating strictly by tunneling, right, with Beacon? So they haven't tested the ability to use the Omni between there and EOC, right? They're on. Does EOC have antennas for mesh?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just
I-
curious.
I've
Why-
never
why-
seen any connection. I've never seen any RF connection to the EOC. I've only ever seen internet tunnel connections.
Yeah, that could be a policy issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate you very much. You don't know. Mark looks like he stepped away, so we'll go to John, the better half of Rita from the Salvation Army Hub. Go ahead, John.
Well, not a whole lot to report other than we could be operational short notice now since we have a box. We're able to open it and get into it. We have probably 4, maybe 5 additional people that are potentially good participants, and maybe 3 that are a little on the iffy side. So we're coming along on the recruitment okay. We're going to be going for practice ourselves over to Madison. I think toward the end of the month they have a drill over there. I think last weekend of the month or something in that neighborhood, to get a little bit more time in on role playing and so forth to get the how to in place a little bit better. So so far it's marching along, not as fast as I'd hope, but it's getting there.
Well, Rome wasn't built in a day. Is this the exercise on the 22nd?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. I think Cindy will be there.
Yeah, 22nd.
All right. Thanks, John. Mark, I see you're back. Do you have anything for the good of the group?
Oh, well, I don't know. I was down at CPAC. I guess it's been a while since I've been on this. And there were some guys down there from, I thought they said Bainbridge or maybe farther north, that were fiddling around with Meshtastic, which kind of intrigued me a little bit. So I got a couple of those devices. It's very, very active in the PDX area. There's even a Discord channel called Meshtastic PDX. But they don't reach all the way out here to Ridgefield. I only ever link with anybody when I bring my unit in the truck into town, except one time somebody sent their transmitter up on a balloon about 500 feet over the Portland area. And man, everybody was connecting with everybody. The messaging was phenomenal.
Well, we just need to put a 500-foot tower up for you.
Yeah, there you go. But that's that LoRa, that 900 megahertz stuff. Meanwhile, I moved about a year ago, and for a long time I couldn't locate any of my mesh equipment. So at CPAC, I bought another HAP AC that had been pre-programmed from the what is it, Cascade Amateur Radio Society. They've got a very robust mesh network going on in the Willamette Valley Mesh Network. Spent, no sooner did I take that new gear out of the box than I found the stuff I'd been looking for. It never fails. So then I had to spend almost 2 full days reprogramming or updating the firmware in all these Arden nodes. Still don't seem to be able to connect to anybody other than on field day with the Meshtastic. A local church group had a field day site set up in the parking lot that's about a mile or so away, and we had Meshtastic between us. Right now, I'm running 3 different meshes around my farm here. The broadband HamNet stuff still works. I just use that for ham shack access. I've also got an Arden node or 2 running, but they don't ever see anybody. But then for the family use, we've got these TP-Link range extenders all around. Those are pretty cute little devices, probably programmable. I don't think Arden has looked into using the range extenders, but there is some firmware available for other hardware. But kind of the point here is that where the 2.4 gig doesn't work, the 5 gig does, even though it's in the publicly available channels. I think that's because even though my neighbors are, well, we're in the middle of 5 acres and so are all the neighbors. You don't ever see any wave interference from their networks. Kat thinks I'm not paying enough attention to her.
Mm.
Yeah, well, what else? I don't know. The next thing is to put up a tower and maybe run a few CPE 210s or 510s up there and aim them towards Portland to see if I can link up with anybody. In theory, it would be possible. In actual practice, I'm 10 miles from the I-5 bridge, and the nodes that I could maybe connect with are all on hilltops at 800 feet. So in theory, it would be doable. I had a 13-mile link when Hamwan was down here on Livingston Mountain. And that was just running the bullet Microtech bullets into a dish. But it was running very well, received signal level of about 80 dB and a noise floor of 115 dB. So using dishes going point to point is probably going to be the best solution for getting that shot, even at 3 miles from West Seattle to the point east. And
Yeah, I think you're right. Based on our conversation, at least a dish on the west side and maybe a sector antenna on the east side.
I would reverse that.
A dish on Beacon and a sector antenna out here on the west.
Yes. The Willamette Valley mesh people use the 120-degree sector antennas quite well, especially when they're doing it in the 5 gigahertz. They use the different frequencies so that their nodes do not interfere with each other. But the sector antenna is a lot easier to find than a narrow beam would be. So if you put up the sector antenna first and then take the dish over to where you're going to be looking for it, you can do what in the Air Force we used to call the wideband handshake. The handshake, pulling and handshaking.
Mhm.
Am I going way too fast for anybody? Basically, you start waving your hand around until you finally go like this.
Yeah. Well, there's different ways. You can also do that at night if there's access. You can do laser lights to hone in on the location.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got some interesting experiences with using lasers at night.
So, all right. Well, I hope you stick with it, Mark. Don't give up.
Well, the other thing to do is I've got a secondary home down in Ocean Park area that in theory has a line of sight to Capitol or to KO Mountain. MNO, yeah, KO. So if there's any kind of a presence up there, but it's probably because all the people are east of there or north of there that probably wouldn't be aiming that thing to the southwest.
Who do we have on the phone
Hey, you
there?
guys. Christian,
Let's
K7XTN. We can start the meeting now. Hey, Ron, it's Christian, K7XTN.
We've been waiting for you, Christian.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Christian. I renamed you so you're not your phone number.
All right. Well, yeah, I just sorry to join late, and just calling to listen in to the end of the meeting here.
Okay. We probably haven't covered anything that you don't already know about, if anything. So we'll go ahead and move over to John Walling.
So I don't have anything to report. I'm just a fly on the wall.
Okay. Well, that makes it easy. So, Christian, just to catch you up, in a nutshell, Nick had an opportunity to set up a network up in Minnesota and was
Michigan.
successful. Michigan. It starts with an M. Give me a break. In Michigan. And he used some AREDNMESH tactics and equipment. So he's starting to get, I think he's going to be able to engineer our problems out of our problems. But we're trying to get the link between Beacon and either Providence, Mount St. Vincent, or Admiral Brookdale to get a little bit stronger and more reliable. So your thoughts?
That's cool. That's great news. I mean, great that those all sound like good progress.
All right. Haven't talked to you since Ramrod. Have you recovered from all your knuckle bashing with those bicycles?
Yeah, that was a good trip. That was a ton of fun, and yeah, that's a good event. I'm actually headed up to I'm going to be headed up to Plain, Washington for the Plain 100 ultra marathon here on Saturday. I'm going to go up and assist with that. And actually, now that I think of it, I do have one Arden related thing to share. We're going to do a Randy Levesque and KJ7WLT, Ron, who you know, and Susanna Cunningham, WB7CON, who are both with Seattle ACS. And actually, Nick has also met both of them. The three of us are doing a seminar at the University of Washington. Randy is an applied mathematician who does tsunami modeling and wave propagation stuff, and he's part of there's a Pacific Northwest network, like tsunami, earthquake, seismic awareness network, or anyway, it's a bunch of a bunch of academics who all study seismic activity in earthquakes and tsunamis. So we're going to do a presentation to those folks on emergency communications and ham radio, and I'm going to do just a a very brief summary about or introduction to Hamlin and Arden, you know, just in literally just about 5 minutes, but just just to let folks know what it is. And I think Ron, I can't remember if you and Nick, I think you guys were involved in these discussions with, or you might have had a conversation with Randy about this, but there was some talk of they're trying to install a Hamlin dish over, oh hell, somewhere on campus, somewhere on upper campus. And I think that Randy had some thought about putting an Arden dish up there. I don't remember for certain. I know that he was looking at Hamlin, but I want to say that he was also thinking about whether or not it'd be possible to stick an Arden dish up there. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that real quick.
You're talking about somewhere near Red Square.
That's what it's whatever building they've got their, you know, their seismic, you know, like modeling, you know, center.
I used to know where Bill Steele was at. Bill Steele was involved in the seismic.
Yeah, then you already know more than I do, Ron. It's somewhere north of Pacific Avenue. You know,
if they have a place with height, then we can definitely fix them up. I can give them the parts list for a non-penetrating mount and get them the antenna and the radio and the Cat 5 cable that they need and all that kind of stuff if they want to put a node up.
It sure would be nice to get some combined Arden and Hamlin installations up. You know, things that take advantage of the Hamlin backbone and link it up with Arden for local, you know, for a.
Well, that's what
internet
Doug
point.
Kingston was trying to do with Providence Mount St. Vincent, is tie in Hamlin into the AREDNMESH from Beacon.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we've sort of run into a brick wall.
And why is that? What's the? It'll be out of my depth, but what's the issue you've run into?
I'll just say the signal strength is not reliable.
The Hamlin signal strength?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not Hamlin, Arden.
Okay. Oh, the Arden signal strength. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, more to follow probably on that. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? All right, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.